Happy Sunday, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. I'm going to record this again. Sadly, I don't know if it's Google or Microsoft. I don't care. When I'm using my very expensive tablet that I had to buy to use online to make my videos on this stupid tablet that I spent way too much for, Google Pixel tablet, don't interfere with my recordings when I'm recording. Nobody has permission to edit me but me. So let's be clear. This video is for open source. Anybody who wants to use it can use it. Nobody makes money off of me. I don't even make money off of me or my content. So for goodness sake, stop trying to. These are public service announcements from a podcaster. I hold no medical degree or law degree. I offer no advice other than from my own personal experience, and you can take it or leave it if I offer advice. Because I have no skills other than survival skills, which, as a Canadian-born girl in 1962, you needed them before you were born. This 63-year-old woman has some skills developed over 63 years of on-the-job training. So my reason for making my recording today, and there's Jesus over my shoulder. I tried to do it from my garden, but of course I must have been saying something that was offending somebody. These people that seem to take control of my tablet and delete my videos as I'm making them practically. I don't know if those skills, if these AI have those capabilities to that degree in Canada, but I could certainly see why, the government of Canada would want to censor people from even speaking before they even have a chance to put it out in public, because they don't want information going out to Canadian people, not real information. They only want a narrative that we did, that there's something that government has done that isn't evil. Literally everything the Liberal government has done to this country in the last 15 years, everything it's done to this country in the last 15 years has been evil, regardless of what party ran the show. I suspected it started somewhere in the 60s, where all three parties are equally evil. It's only been since the Trudeau tap dance baby PMT did to maintain power as long as he did, woke an awful lot of people, because this guy was overtly breaking every law of Canada and human rights acts. And people of Canada who used to know what those were certainly understood that there's something wrong here. Our history does not reflect, Justin Trudeau's history does not reflect actual history of our country. But then why would it? Justin Trudeau is an idiot. Abused, probably, son of a diabolical narcissistic maniac who was a commie. Who was in league with a bunch of other rich and powerful elite monster communists to develop a plan in the 1970s in Rome that evolved into the World Economic Forums, Davos conferences. Evil, greedy, evil people that choose to be evil. Choose to be evil. You don't choose to be good, or you're not born anything other than the perfect likeness of God above. Perfect in every way, shape, or form. Everything evil you become by choice. You choose to do that based on your circumstances. You could choose to go the other way too. Once you get into your late teens, you used to be able to know that just by common sense, by using your critical thinking skills. Right from wrong comes from the soul of the thinking human being, not from an AI or any construct, certainly not from any king, queen, or ruler. If they're a king, queen, or ruler, they're lying to you. And they don't have your best interest at heart because they want to stay ruling you. And they certainly don't want enemies that speak and tell you the truth when they've spent their entire existence lying to you, manipulating you, using you, exploiting you, and then murdering you. Slowly but surely. By tearing everything that's valuable beyond a checkbook. Tearing down the family structure, for example. Reducing men to little wimps who aren't allowed to be manly in any way, shape, or form. Because that's what is the term that they use for that nowadays? What is it? Toxic masculinity. There's nothing toxic about masculinity any more than something toxic about femininity. They're gifts from God given to the individual, male or female, one or the other, not either or. Apparently, Kearney's got a law in the mail to put people like me in jail for saying such things that are true. Under this hate bullshit that's so arbitrary that it's arbitrarily applied. It's okay to hate a Catholic Church and Catholics so much that you're burning down their churches, but it's not okay to not pretend that you believe that there are dead bodies buried under that residential school. There was a stupid show that another very stupid good person acted in. He forgot that he's only an actor. Tom Cruise, called Jerry Maguire. Show me the money. Right? That encapsulates this world of Canada, especially, because the stupid Canadians my age, and some younger, everyone older, believed that success meant possession of things. Things. Success didn't mean a good person doing the right thing, even when the world tells you to do the wrong thing. Love your children. Love your spouse. Respect your spouse as a partner equal to you in all things because you're co-creators in God's creation. Marriage is for making mothers. Matrimony. How do you make a mother? A man and a woman come together in the holy union, the marital embrace, the holiest of holy embraces, when it's done under the sacramental union of a marriage, where you're devoted to each other and to the children and the family that you're meant to develop. That's part of the human consciousness everywhere in this world, despite what you believe. But the Trudeaus of this world, the Gates of this world, the Carneys of this world would have you believe that no, it's the worst thing you could do is raise your children, devote your life to your family and the success of a family that stayed together even when They weren't pretty or attracted to each other. That stayed together, even though they fought and argued and disagreed. That stayed with each other because they knew that they were the only other person in this world that they could count on, because they were unified. A union, a covenant that goes beyond just this world, spiritual in every way. When you choose a partner in life, and you choose to live with that partner in life despite all things, it means despite all things. It means that. It's a decision, love is a decision, not a feeling. So that man who celebrates Father's Day today, and should, and earned it, just by being born a man. But it's up to him to determine what kind of father he's going to be, even if he can't have a biological child of his own. Is he going to be somebody worth following? Is he going to be somebody worth the words that come from his mouth? Have them be listened to and understood, because they come from love, compassion, and understanding that his job is to protect the life before him. Above all things, to love God, to serve God in this world, and to do God's will. And he wills humanity in all its forms. The ones who have fallen to sin, despair, brutality, evil deeds, who began their life in this world as a creature for God, that God created for a purpose of divine providence. They are divine regardless of the evil choices that they make, because they are human. And they should be told they're not God. That's job number one. Learn that. God is love. And love is not a feeling, it's a decision. To love in spite of all things. Anyway, honor your fathers today. I may not be able to post too many more times. I've got a surgery scheduled and I'm not feeling very well physically. And my concern is the regular old DNR questions that you have to answer when you're going for a surgical procedure that holds a lot of risks. There are risk factors that I may not be able to overcome truly this time. You know, you hear those words, do you want us to start your heart again? Yes, please. Do you want us to put you on a respirator? Yes, please. I'd like the whole package, please. That's what I worked my whole life for. A healthcare system that used to be reliable and was promised to all Canadians. I choose life. I don't choose death. I'd like to stay alive a lot longer, because I believe that my purpose on this earth has not been accomplished yet. And I don't want anybody other than God determining when I leave this planet, spiritually speaking. Waiting for my turn to rise again. If I can just offer all this suffering that I've gone through for the salvation of the souls, and do the right thing, make the right choice, even when the temptation to tell that nasty story that I have in my heart to say, because I was mistreated, truthfully, by people that should have known better. But they have their own reason for mistreating me. And I know that I'm not easy. None of us are. We're not meant for this world. None of us are. I was blessed, given the gift to know that I wasn't meant in this world when I was a little baby. Too young to even know that I wasn't safe in this world. as a 2 or 3 year old little girl. But I knew it because God gave me the preparation to know what I know. And I need to share from my personal experience, somebody who's lived my life as a Canadian, born into an intergenerational Canadian family, Indigenous and Scottish and everything else. Indigenous to Canada for centuries. Before Canada even became Canada, my people lived here. Right back to before history was being created for Canadians and recreated because of Pierre Trudeau needed to change the narrative a lot in order for Canadians to become as brainwashed and stupid as they have become in my lifetime. Forgotten who they were and why they exist, why they have the pleasures of living in such a beautiful country. They had forgot that on purpose, beginning before I was born, but definitely in full swing by 1962 when I was born. I don't know. My mother admired Diefenbaker. I don't know if he was real or not, but I know this. The Kennedy assassination was the first reset attempt for the world. And who did we have when Kennedy was assassinated in Canada? An appointee from the Commonwealth. Our Governor General has more control over the freedoms that Canada owns than our Prime Minister does. Remember that when you're wondering who to hold to account. Our Governor General doesn't serve Canadians. She serves the Crown, and she's crazy. Just saying. She's a Looney Tune greenie baby who will do as she's told because she psychotically believes that our environment, the life of a snail, is more important than the life of a person. That's crazy train. This world was created by God, and man has done more to destroy it for the sake of money that Carney has hold sway over. And he pretends to be a green person. It's power and control, darlings, over our food supply, over our energy sources, over our very right to live. Kearney and his like have that control over every individual person who lives in Canada, and we gave it to them. Hitler had to at least manipulate behind the scenes. Kearney is doing it right out in front. Didn't they honor under Trudeau's watch a war criminal from Nazi out of Ukraine in our parliament? That was the Liberal government people. Who is Kearney allegiant to? Who? What ruler? I know that Justin Trudeau made his deals with the Chinese Communist Party to sell Canadians out. Kearney has his deals everywhere with everyone, but he answers to the Crown. And who's that Crown? Prince Charles, or King Charles. Camilla. Queen Camilla, King Charles. Now, I wept for William and Harry. There's a reason that poor woman suffered the way she did publicly. Their mother, Diana. There's also a reason why her death and Mother Teresa's death are closely tied in my mind in history. No, Lady Diana, I wasn't a living saint. I believe beyond all reason that Mother Teresa was a living saint. I discovered her in grade 3. Sister Therese taught me all about her in grade 3 at Our Lady of Assumption School in Grand Center, Alberta, in the 60s, when this little military brat with her brother and sister invaded that beautiful Catholic school with all we had, and they taught us about Jesus and what the Catholic Church was supposed to teach us, but weren't allowed to because of the misinterpretation of the rules and regulations coming out of Vatican II. Vatican II is a spiritual guideline document. It wasn't supposed to change any tenet of the church because it couldn't. These people are men. Popes are men. They can make mistakes, but our Pope Paul, that beautiful man who's a saint now, Saint Pope Paul VI, came out with documents that made sure that the world understood that it wasn't supposed to change doctrinal truths that came down from Jesus himself of the church. And that little loophole that somebody decided to exploit, that was choosing to do the wrong thing as opposed to Pope Paul choosing to do the right thing. See, even popes have a choice. Pope Benedict had his choices stripped from him, I believe, because unfortunately, he was so faithful, so spiritual, so beautiful. He stood in the shadow of that wall that was built through Palestine in the Holy Land. And he had a rabbi on one side and Amman on the other. And he held their hands and they prayed together in the shadow of that wall. And I knew he was going to be under spiritual attack because he was bringing the Holy Land together under the one God that all of those major faith traditions believe in. Our faith comes from the Judaism tradition, both as Christian and as Muslim. History cannot erase that. We are the monolithic faith that God. We believe in the one God that brings us together, regardless of what our manly men that we considered prophets to one degree or another told us and interpreted God's word for us. But that's all they were doing, is interpreting from a manly human nature. They were not God. Our popes are not God. Our rabbis are not God. Our imams are not God. Our prophets are not God. There's only one God. And he speaks to your stomach, not your head. And your guts tell you when it's wrong. Your guts do, even if you're a Muslim, even if you're a Jew, even if you're a Christian. You know right from wrong. And the smart person understands you don't use a hammer to swat a fly. You don't. And I think you know who I'm talking to. Country, who's led by a very nasty man who maybe has been doing too much because of greed and not faith and not entitlement. Nobody's entitled to anything that God didn't give him directly. And everything that you can possess belongs to God, not to you. And when you try to possess God's creation, the people, because of their status, their classification, their income level, their popularity, well, then you are evil. And that's an evil choice that you choose to make. And that sends you down to an eternity that I wouldn't want to have to face. I'm not God. The eternity that we live is chosen for us by God and us in cooperation with His will in our life. I know that's true. No matter who you are, if that offends you, you need to ask yourself the question, why does that offend me? I am my own person. I can choose to do beautiful things. I can also choose to do ugly things. And we can get pretty ugly. One only has to look at human history to determine how ugly it can be. Recent history, the history of our North American world that was poisoned in 2020 by evil traffickers who were trafficking children to be used, exploited. That's evil, no matter what culture. And because if you believe that that's not evil, then you're serving the devil. You're not serving God. And you need to stop doing that. You hold the other person up no matter who they are and whether or not they agree with you politically. And especially if their state in life is less than yours. Because you don't own that money you've got in your bank account. Carney does in Canada. And he distributes it accordingly in Canada. Because that's his focus. Believe it or not. I just surmise if you look deep enough, you can see that that's what his mindset is. I believe that, truthfully. And he's doing everything to make sure that he in some way owns something of every company that is allowed to conduct business in Canada. I believe that to be true. I accuse him of that because I believe public records can testify to that. There's no such thing as a blind trust when you know everything that you own before you put that into a blind trust. Because you haven't trusted that fortune to somebody who won't do exactly what you want them to do. You know that, and I know that, and the world knows that, Mr. Carney. The only people that don't seem to know that are the CBC, the CTV, and Global Television Network, and every liberal that's making money off of your choices in Parliament today. And some conservatives, apparently, considering how many floor crossers you used to build your majority that's false. That's criminal behavior, in my opinion. The Nuremberg trials, remember those? They determined what's normal behavior of a leader of a country that's a democratically elected country. Mr. Hitler killed himself because the government was going to kill him bad because of the choices that he made that caused the death and destruction of the country that was Germany. Let's not forget our recent history, people. Those people that escaped underground from his regime that supported his every move and made a fortune off them migrated to places like Canada, the United States, Europe, and Israel. Just so you know. The victims, most of them are dead and poor. and migrated to North America to save their very lives and to reap the benefits of being safe for the first time in their lives. But there were a lot of evil communists that came with them that had their own agenda, cover up for what they did during World War II and create a world just like Hitler had. Not Trump. Trump's a lot of things, that's true, but he's not that kind of evil. But every leader that you guys had in the United States was prior to Trump's confusing election in 2016. Just so you know, it didn't matter, Republican or Democrat, equally evil. Equally evil. But you had superstars like Tulsi, J.D. Vance, I hope and pray. Mr. Trump, didn't any of you read his book on the art of the deal? Did any of you watch him make the right choices on The Apprentice? Yes, a lot of that stuff in the later season got scripted, but watch the first season of it. I think Mr. Trump was awakened, had his eyes opened during his experiences there. Yes, he was a man. He was a rich man, more intergenerationally rich, so he knew a thing or two about how to survive. But his conscience drew a line. That's why he became a politician. He wanted to be able to live with the money he made. He made a lot of mistakes, that's true. Nancy Pelosi, look at that thing. How did she make her money? He built things, Trump did. He inspired people. He created very wealthy people who became good business thinkers in their own right. Long before he chose politics, he had his money. He didn't need to get it paid off in order to do the will of his master. He was the master of his own household. If you're not serving God, you're serving something, and it's usually evil. He learned that, I suspect, the hardest ways that we never got privy to. And that's why the Democrats did so much to destroy him, to the point where they lied and created a riot that didn't exist and locked up 1,500 people, law-abiding citizens who supported Trump. They locked them up on June 6th. They planted their own bombs on June 6th. The evidence is there, if anybody cares to look. I believe it in my heart and soul. The evidence is there and will come out. Mr. Dan Bongino knows that. Kash Patel, you know that too. Tulsi, you know that. Kamala Harris, you know that. Mrs. Biden, you know that. Hunter Biden, you know that. Come on. Grow a conscience and come to God and do the right thing for your country, the people who live and die because of the choices that you make because you're in a position of power. I'm giving all my power to my God and the surgeon who agreed to finally put in the surgically implanted feeding tube I'm due to receive on Friday. But I don't know if I'm strong enough to make it through that procedure. And based on my odds, I'm scared this time. So if you're a prayerful person and you're out there, please pray for me to make it through my surgery, if I have it on Friday, if the anesthesiologist signs me off, and if I'm not suffering from a sepsis infection at this point. All I know is the site where the feeding tube went into my stomach directly started bleeding yesterday morning, and I was too afraid to go to the hospital to get it treated. And it was more important for me to see my great-granddaughter, who was born dead at Mount Sinai Hospital almost 6 years ago this November. maybe for the last time in my reality, should something happen to me on that surgical, during surgery or post-surgically. But that was more important than seeing any what passes for emergency medical care in Canada now for somebody like me is a little scary and sketchy. So I've got to hold out until I see the anesthesiologist and pray that this isn't a sepsis infection. Because if it is, well, we all know what sepsis does to the human body. If it's only an infection, maybe the third round of antibiotics will be the charm to clear me of it. And I hope that the anesthesiologist will make sure that I've got all of the antibiotics and clear of infection before he signs off my ability to go through surgery. That's my hope for this week, is to talk to the anesthesiologist and say, look, I think I'm still infected. Can you run the blood work to make sure it's not a sepsis? Or give me whatever antibiotics will ultimately clear this infection that keeps coming back and back and back again before my surgical date, which is Friday, when they tie the feeding tube directly into my small bowel, hopefully, and it works. But scleroderma is long-standing. Scleroderma does a lot of things to a person's body, and I understand the risks. So practically speaking, I've understood the risks to my physical life here on Earth for a long time, and I'm okay with that. But I want to live and get the job done that I was meant to do here in Canada. And I was born to this country during the time that I've lived, and I've come to understand these things because God gave me the gift. What I know comes from God. It's not from me. But it needs to be understood by the right people in order for the salvation of this world, the living and dead, and for the world to come. Peace on earth, goodwill toward men. That's not lost, it's just dormant. The people that are charged with creating that peace, goodwill toward men, forgiveness, love, thy neighbor, turn the other cheek, all that stuff. Gems, that's the treasure beyond all gold. That's a pearl of great price that's spoken about in the Bible. The family comes from that. Faith. Your purpose is individually yours, given to you by God alone, not to be taken from you by man. And it's meant for the good. No matter what ugly you've done, you can always choose to turn your back on the ugly and beg God for forgiveness. Beg your victims for forgiveness if you've done harm to somebody else, too. But beg God for forgiveness, because He will forgive you for sure. And your fellow man will forgive you when you make amends and do the right thing by them, if you've done something wrong. Love is universal. And again, it's a decision. It's not a warm and fuzzy feeling. It's what we choose to do when somebody harms us and they're in pain because of what they've done. And we reach out to them and say, you can always change. Justin Trudeau will only get uglier as long as he chooses to harbor resentment for the way he gets treated for the things that he's done. Because he's being treated that way, because he's done some pretty bad things to people he shouldn't have done it to. And they're hurting, and they lash out in pain. Own what you've done that is wrong. And turn your back to doing what's wrong and do the right thing that God's asking you to do. No, those two people that murdered that poor innocent boy in December in the UK. There's a reason they did what they did. It's because they chose to listen to the voice that's in their head that tells them that they're a victim of this poor guy. And they're not. They have nothing to fear. But they had the right, they believed, to take his life because he offended them. Because that's what they were taught. They were taught to do that by evil people who chose to teach that because they chose evil. You don't teach that if you're a good person. If it's not from God, it's evil. And God would never tell you to kill somebody because they affronted your faith. God doesn't want you to kill somebody because that person you think he's telling you to kill is his creation. He doesn't want you to do that. He created that person for the same reason he created you, to do the right thing. That choice is yours to make. Carney, you can choose a different path. The door's wide open because nobody sinned more than Trump did. He turned his back on not one but two wives before he met Melania. He showed him God in a real way, in a sacrificial way. She's wrong when it comes to abortion. Wrong. But she's a person too. She's prone to be wrong from time to time. She did the right thing, I believe, when she chose life for Barron. She could have chosen not to have Barron, but she chose to give him life. And look at that beautiful boy. Look at that beautiful boy that Barron is. That kind of beauty doesn't come from evil. It comes from God. He happens to be sporting Trump's blood and Melania's, and they're people. Good people. I believe they're doing what they can for the good. Yes, he's got an ego. He earned his ego, just the same as every one of us does. And yes, he's got a bad mouth. I do too. People like us are not easy to get along with, because we speak the truth, ugly or not, as best we can. We make mistakes, and we're prone to making them just as equal to the measure you're prone to making mistakes too. Those of us who grew up in my time with the people that I was surrounded by, you learned things like you shouldn't cast stones if you live in a glass house. People who want to keep secrets are liars. They don't know what the truth is. They can't keep track of their lies. So they keep the secrets. It's easier. Alter history. The people who tell you what you want to hear, not what you should hear, are lying to you. They want to tickle your ears so they control your body. Stop letting them do that. Feed your stomach the truth. That's where the truth lays. That's why Jesus became bread and became his body. He feeds our stomachs because our brains will tell us we're God, but our stomachs know the difference because we all have to go to the bathroom and have a bowel movement from time to time. God doesn't. That's what was so offensive. I heard from somebody who, smarter than me, said that's what was so offensive to the angels. They were all spiritual and all-knowing beings, and God wanted to create us with our ability to have his intellect, and but we have to choose to have it, and his ability to understand, but we have to be willing to learn what he's trying to teach us by understanding it, not gather knowledge. A textbook cannot give you what you draw from it, what your critical thinking skills that came from God, that the government is trying to take from you by giving you theories instead of critical thinking skills. so that you can develop your own theories of why this A plus B does not equal C necessarily. In the language of today, the alphabet is all, it identifies what your sexual preference is, not the way to learn how to form words. It's ridiculous. How psychotic do you have to be the instrument of your own destruction by refusing to breed? Animals know how to breed. Rabbits, most of all. But they don't know why they should be. They don't know what drives them to want to. We do. That's a gift from God alone. Because we're built in His image and likeness for His reason alone. And it's us alone who are meant to find out what that reason is. And when He gives it to you, gives you the gift of understanding what that reason is, there's nothing going to stop you. The original Christians lined up to die, to be crucified. In Iraq, they were lined up and beheaded from the front as recently as the Iraq War and the consequences thereof, that never should have been a war in the first place. Constructs. A Ukrainian war is a construct to keep these people who want to destroy you in power by eliminating you if you've got a critical thinking skills, or replacing you if you don't, but you're not ready to run with the program because you believe you have human rights. You don't have any human rights that are given to you by government. Government strips you of all your human rights to control you. Ask any communist nation. Ask Chinese people. The ones who escaped, not the ones that have been implanted here after 2017. Tiananmen Square was just memorialized the other day. Hardly anybody showed up for it. That one lone man standing in front of that tank, I watched it happen live. The strength, the courage, that courage came from God. God alone, not His government. He wanted them to stop the slaughter of human beings, individuals who just wanted to live free, to create. They had a one-child policy at that time. And the horrors that they inflicted on the people of that nation, to rip the second child from that woman's womb, the horrors that it took that mother to put that female child on the curb because she knew, culturally speaking, she needed to give birth to a son because they have no social system to take care of their elderly. That's a family that does that. And the son, the firstborn son, takes care of their elderly. In that noble tradition that was beautiful before communism destroyed it and bred it out of their population. These people are so broken. There are months of the year where they just run down children with their vehicles. Children going to school to such an extent that they have to put bollards up and make it safe for children to cross the streets on sidewalks. That's a broken society. And that happened post-World War II in my lifetime. And we were quiet and silenced to the multitude of Chinese suffering, the consequences of the communist regime that took over their world after they were slaughtered during World War II. Slaughtered by the Japanese, unfortunately, were convinced that they had a supreme right to do that to people. That's happened in China on a scale that's unimaginable, and the world doesn't even know it happened. So is it any wonder that Iraq happened? Rwanda happened. Afghanistan happened. Syria happened. Sudan. These monsters created that. Somalia. My lifetime. These people were so malnourished on a countrywide scale by the government that was greedy and used as a weapon against them by their rulers, European rulers, globalist rulers, destroyed the African continent, the cradle of humanity, the cradle of civilization. The world doesn't exist if it weren't for Africa, that continent, that beautiful continent. We were all one. As the world itself expanded as it was meant to, because it was created by God to be our home as we lived our physical lives out as stewards of this planet, not lords. There's only one Lord, God. But these lords and ladies and rulers and elites and kings and queens and entitled people with special bloodlines that have lasted Rothschilds 1,000 years almost. The Mountbattens, 1,000 years for sure. They were all relate back to that one family. All throughout Europe, Russia. Remember what happened to the Russian king and queen in the 20th century? Communism did that to that family, murdering infants because they were royals, because everybody's supposed to be equal, except they were so filled with hate, the population was so filled with hate for the royals, they killed them right down to the babies. And then stripped the population of everything they owned so that they could rule them with the iron fist. And 60 million, people say, were murdered that weren't measuring up to the communist equal society, equality for everybody except for you. If you don't toe the line and become one of the collectives, well, we're not meant to be a collective. We're meant to be an individual. That's why countries matter. That's why sovereignty matters. That's what Trump is fighting for, to return control of the country of origin to the people of the country that built that. In Canada, that's me. In the United States, that's every American that went there before Biden opened the borders to every criminal on the planet to come and destroy the people that built that country. Because he did that on purpose. That's how it's done for thousands of years. The Roman Empire did the same thing. The Egyptian Empire did the same thing. The Jewish empires, kings and queens in the form of rabbis, did the same thing. They were kings too. Their game is thousands of years old. And we Canadians are so stupid We forgot that we were running from them when we came to create this world. Those of us, that half of my lineage that came to this country before it was built to settle for free base, a free spot of land where they were allowed to live. In my family, my dad's side, they were Gaelic speaking Northern Scottish people, Catholics. They weren't welcome anywhere, especially Scotland. The Catholic Gaelic of Northern Scotland survives because of Cape Breton, where I'm from. They were teaching it to Scottish people who were coming over in my lifetime to learn it again because it was a forbidden language. Why? Because they could communicate outside of government rule. It's the Gaelic, because the British rulers didn't speak that particular form of Gaelic. And when you don't speak the language, then the language of the people becomes the language that they spoke before you got there. Our conquerors speak Arabic or Mandarin. Our conquerors do. That doesn't mean that they're evil. That just means that they have bought into the communist bullshit and don't believe that there is a God. We're conditioned intergenerationally to believe that there isn't a God other than their ruler, their leader, or themselves, which is even worse. Mankind cannot exist without Jesus and his teachings. End of story. I don't care if that offends you. It's true. Jesus is King. He is Christ the King. But he's also God the Father. He's also the Holy Spirit, the love. He's all in one. And we can never understand that totally until we hear it from his lips when we become nothing but a spiritual being and a glorified body. That's what Catholics believe. That's what the communion of saints is all about. That's the church triumphant. We're the church militant. And the church suffering of the people who have died before us, waiting for their moment of sanctification, when God himself says to them, "You've done well, my good and faithful servant. Welcome into the kingdom that he has prepared for us." Because that's the truth too. Some of us are lucky enough to know it. So death isn't the end. And that's what Christians were able to stand tall. Somebody cut their head off front to back. Not the way they used to do it in the British age, the old age. William Wallace, if that story was, any portion of that story was true, you know what the king did? He drew and quartered him first. It was a mercy to finally cut his head off because they did it from the back. Well, in the 20th century, they've evolved to cutting your head off from the front. We had a horrible demonstration of what they evolved to in the streets of Belfast not 2 weeks ago. But that Sudanese man, what horror show did he endure that caused him to be capable of doing such an atrocity? Think about that. You cannot put people who've been through that kind of horror in amongst people who don't know what horror really is. They've never really experienced it, even though they've had a long history. Because we got spoiled in the Western world and complacent. We got spoiled into believing that we were God. And money was God. Possession is God. Not the person we see that has God in his heart in front of us. In the form of a baby, an unborn baby, most of all. In the form of an elderly person, in the form of a filthy, dirty street drug person. There's God in there because he's the body of the church. We are the body of the church that he gave us. He exists there, even in Ted Bundy, that evil man who did those evil things. God exists there still, that still small voice, that light that was extinguished. But before, there was a soul. At some point, we don't know what the last moments in this world were for Ted Bundy's soul. Only God knows that. How shocked would we be to discover with our lives and the choices that we've made, the first face we see is Ted Bundy's face beyond the pearly gates, beyond whatever it is we believe is heaven. That's impossible for the human mind to understand. But that's because we are human. We don't know the depths of compassion that God has for his children. That's why he came to us as a father, I believe. Because what father, on some level, doesn't know his own son or daughter when he looks into the face of his own child? He knows him. And he's bonded instantly with the kind of love that he would kill for, die for. But he's been conditioned to deny that impulse and to put it in a compartment somewhere deep inside the darkest parts of the human heart so that he could do the evil one's will and allow that baby to be murdered before it's even had a chance to draw breath. When his every instinct is to save that baby, to love that baby, to protect that baby, because his masculine identity is courage, strength, and the ability to do the most brutal thing to protect the innocent. Do the most brutal thing he has to do to protect the innocent. When a man becomes capable of that, he cannot be ruled. And he will not stand aside and let somebody rule another. That's a universal truth that we all know in our hearts and our minds. And if we strive for that, a world of that, we've earned a treasure beyond all telling. Beyond, Elon Musk became a trillionaire. There is such good in that man. But he's a man. He might make a mistake, stumble along the way. But I believe him. He's going through his own spiritual journey. He's taking it his own way. We each have to walk our journey with the voice of God in our stomach and deafness in the ears that will be tickled by the devil, and the mind that will create a God within ourselves. Listen to God by coming to him and begging for him to have mercy on us, forgive us our sins, and relieve us of our temptations so that we can do his will in our own life, with our own life that he's given us as a gift to share him through our lives by the way we treat our brother, our sister, our son, our daughter, our neighbor. I guess that's my message for today. I've talked for a good long while, over an hour. Pray for me. If I do get to have that surgery, pray for me to keep the infection at bay. That's all I really want. If it doesn't work out for me, it doesn't. And God's will be done. I've enjoyed this life that he's given me, and I'd like to continue it if I can. I hope that my posts will become more beautiful, more inspired by God, unless inspired by me and the thoughts that roll in my head that make me very angry. I hope I've reached somebody who heard what they needed to hear, or given emboldened to face the next day in this world, because we're meant to live out whatever suffering comes in this world. Embrace it, just as Jesus embraced that cross. It's the joy of being given the gift of a taste of his suffering. That's how we get to become saints. Lazarus was a very rich man who ignored the plight of his neighbor, who sat at his gate every day with his filthy, disgusting boils, putrefied body, wounds all over himself that the dogs were licking to try to heal. He was in that bad a shape, so close to death, begging. And Lazarus didn't even see him. But he was welcomed into the kingdom of God. And Lazarus was confused. I've done so much good in my life, he said. I gave so much to my faith. He was all for God. I thought I knew you. But God knew that the God he worshipped wasn't the God who spoke to him, who would have opened his eyes to that dying peasant at his gate and given him the wherewithal and the compassion to bring him into his home, to heal his wounds, to give him the love and the care that Mother Teresa gave every day of her life once she made it to Calcutta, and they were throwing away people. That's the difference between a serial killer and a saint. The serial killer will steal everything that you hold, everything you value. But the saint will give you what values beyond all measure, the love, the kindness, and the compassion that God intended you to receive in your hour of need. The Jewish faith forgot that over its multi-millennia history. Forgot that simple truth that God sent all of those prophets down to earth to share with them. They forgot that part. He finally did send his son, his only begotten son, to show us what we couldn't. Our ears kept getting tickled to the sound of the words the evil one, who wants our own destruction, tickles our ears with, through our ears into our brains. They're not God's brain. Smart enough to be God's brain, yes, but that brain that becomes that smart is not a brain that you earn in any way. It's a gift from God. And you only get to know what you're allowed to know so that you can make the choice you're supposed to make. But God's there whispering it to you in your stomach, not your ears. That sixth sense, that hair, spidey senses, some people call them. That's God whispering in your stomach. Come to me. Come to me, those who are lost. And he will lead you. But you have to be willing to hear the hard truth. Mr. Netanyahu, change your ways. Christians are not your enemy. Muslims are not your enemy. You are your own worst enemy. And the enemy that's attacking you lasts for an eternity, not for in a lifetime. Remember that. Your Jewish heritage you should already know that's true. The evil one wants you dead. And who's best positioned to kill you, your soul, for all eternity? You are, not God. You choose to be destroyed by the choices you make in life. Stop bombing Lebanon. You are not entitled to the world that you believe you're entitled to. Your practicing religious Jewish brothers and sisters can tell you that's true. You didn't earn any money. You were given because you did the will of the evil one. Just so you know, you didn't earn that money. It was gifted to you by the devil. Position. God gives you the right and the choice of a person's life and the responsibility of protecting that life. Every one of them. The Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims. All three came from that very same soil you claim ownership of. All three of us come from that dirt, bled in our lineage. But nobody more than God himself. He stained the earth of the Holy Land with his own blood for the salvation of your soul, my soul, and the Islamic soul. Preserve the lives in front of you that you call enemies. Figure it out. Stop trying to kill them. Figure it out, make peace. Make peace. Don't let the greedy part of you, the God you tell yourself you are, do more evil. Don't let him. You can turn yourself around in this very moment in time and space. You don't have to believe in the Christian God. Believe in the Jewish God. Your holy books from the Old Testament are my Old Testament son and Mr. Man. Then it's Jesus concealed. The New Testament, you might want to read that. It's Jesus revealed. And Jesus is God, the King, not you. Just so you know. And he loves you. He loves you because he was a Jew too. God bless you all. Have a good day.